Hi, welcome back to the Javits Center. We're live at the Nest Summit, and I'm your host, Jeff Gitterman. Our session right now is Municipal Bond Data and Climate Risk, and I'm joined by Andrew Terrace from Breckenridge, Chris Harshorn from Risk. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here.
So Chris, as you know, I think I'm enamored with the data that your company puts out. I think it's very illuminating to really understand that there are data companies that are really looking forward over the terms of a municipal bond to see what the issues are around climate risk and the factors. Can you tell me a little bit, what is that analysis called, and a little bit about how it works?
Yeah, so the overall solution is called Risk Climate or Muni Climate Analytics, and the goal of it, and the use of it, as we'll hear about from Andrew as well, is to provide issuer universe coverage all the way down to the QSIPs involving that discloses the climate risk for any given issuer of any given maturity. And not just squishy scorecard-based metrics, but we actually get down into the gory detail of critical, health issues for an issuer. Things like real estate at risk, population movement, the population's at risk. So things that really underpin the health of a given municipal bond issuer. That's where we focus, and we can do that with high levels of geospatial granularity.
So, when you started looking at climate risk, what made you start in the area of municipal bonds?
Yeah, well, Risk has actually been around since 2016, so we're Boston headquartered. And I think for a couple of years, the company was looking across different asset classes and across different assets overall. So things like real estate or insurance or looking at corporations. And for a bunch of different reasons, they turned out to be not the best place for us. Insurance companies can change their premiums every year, or they can just ultimately exit from a market in terms of climate risk. In the real estate space, given user can exit out of that real estate position in any given time frame that they feel like they want to. When you go and look at municipal bond issuers, they are inextricably tied to patches of dirt that have asset value on them, and there's no way for them to sell out of those positions. Their revenue lines are tied to those patches of dirt. Their cost lines are tied to those patches of dirt, which means ultimately when climate change impacts a patch of dirt, the one entity, the one group left holding that baby are the municipal bond issuers. There is nowhere for them to run. There is nowhere for them to hide. When we started talking to participants in the municipal bond space, what we saw and heard was it was really poorly understood in terms of what the climate risks actually were to municipal bond issuers. A couple of reasons for that. Far too many reports have talked about the year 2100 in grandiose terms, which allows for the less nuanced thinkers to kick the can down the road and think they're okay. And then the participants we talked to, they looked at historical information and the limited number of defaults that have occurred because of climate events in the municipal bond sector. To use a Gretzkyism, those people are not skating to where the puck is obviously going. They're using historicals that are badly out of context in terms of what we know climate change is going to do to the health of municipal bond issues. And last but not least, there was no data availability. So when we saw the gap and when we saw the knowledge gap, when we took a closer look, no one was actually providing coherent data that was covering the municipal bond sector. It is a complex sector to cover. It has geospatial nuance that not many are capable of providing. So we really saw an opportunity where there was clearly a need in the municipal bond sector. There were clearly users who could use this information, and there was clearly no one providing that information. And this just all fully aligned with the mission that Risk has had all along since it was founded in 2016.
So Chris, when we're talking about the risks that you're assessing, I just want to give people a sense of the depth and breadth of the kind of data, because you're looking at extreme weather risk, you're looking at fire risk, you're looking at heat risk, floods and droughts, water scarcity issues. I mean, this is a plethora of data around each single QSIP that is available in the United States. I mean, that's an incredible universe. I think when people try to imagine it, they can't even have a sense of the depth of data that your company is now providing. And I'm wondering how that drives conversations today when you show a company or an issuer or an investor or an allocator the depth of data that you can provide them.
Yeah, well, once the initial shock of how did you guys do this wears off, and we can actually start looking at the data as opposed to just the enormity of it, then it becomes a lot more focused on how to use it, how to think about it, and that's where the questions really go and how the reactions really follow. So we're providing information that is not just present-day climate, is also climate change conditioned. So we can show, for a given issuer in Florida or Texas and California, what the risk is today, but we can also show what the risk is out to 2030 or 2032 or whatever the specific date is that a given muni bond market participant wants to look at. So I guess it's that initial shock and awe of the enormity of the data, as you say, and that's why it took us 4 years to really pull this thing together. And once we get beyond that point, though, it gets down to very specific questions saying, all right, compare this county to this county, this hospital system to this hospital system. Tell me what my threshold should be. Tell me what my risks are. Tell me how I should think about your data because I've never had access to it before. I've got to think an entirely different paradigm when it comes to your information versus any universe I've ever looked at. And that's really the journey we're on with a lot of clients we work with, is integrating and understanding the data in order to drive actionable decisions.
I'm curious, Chris, because you're doing this data, and I think most of the time you're meeting with allocators or investors. Are you starting to see any of this have an impact on actually issuance of municipal bonds in the marketplace, or we're not there yet?
We are not there yet, or at least we haven't seen any data to suggest that we're there yet. Quite simply, there are not enough participants in the market who are appropriately informed to make appropriately informed decisions. So obviously Andrew will talk from a Breckenridge perspective, and they've always been a thought leader in this space. And we're at the start of that adoption curve. I think once there is an increasing mass, and ideally a critical mass of participants in the market seeing and reacting to the same data, you are going to see splits. You are going to see some deltas. You are going to see climate risk actually priced in. Right now, the tools haven't existed, and the appetite to use those tools hasn't necessarily been there either. We're on the precipice of that changing, given that the data is now available, and I can tell you the traction has been very good out in the market for those that are willing to get into this and will have an advantage in the market as a result.
Chris, to me, it's almost like having inside information, although this is not illegal information, but it really is something that the market isn't pricing in or looking at. We know that's happening. We know the trends. We know the climate models. We know the science. And now we can actually use your data to price in risk. And it seems incredible to me that it's so narrow in the marketplace, but also a huge opportunity for early investors like Breckenridge. Before we turn over to Andrew at Breckenridge, last question for you. Just take us into the future a little bit, although I have to say you've brought us like a quantum leap into the present maybe on the data and risk that are aligned with the work that you're doing. But take us out a little bit to the future. What surprises are you seeing? What trends are you seeing coming out of this data?
Yeah, a few things now we've gotten into it. Even in the present day, we're challenging the premise that climate risk has not started to impact issuers. So we've built out correlations now showing that flood risk can be correlated to population loss, can be correlated to property value loss, things that very much underpin the health of an issuer. We've observed the paucity and I would say the abject lack of climate change and climate risk disclosure by issuers. So I think that's going to be changing in the near future. The quality of disclosure is going to have to improve. Now the quality of data is there to shine a light on it. And then beyond that, I think as climate change continues, and let's face it, we're locked in for the next 10 years in terms of where the climate is going. There's not a lot we can do about it. I think over the next 10 years, you are going to see that split and that bifurcation on climate risk, who's at risk, who isn't, and what's the climate risk deficit that's going to have to be paid by issuers or by participants in the market that aren't aware of their risks.
Chris, thank you so much for giving us insight into the great work that Risk is doing. In order to make it applicable to our audience members, I want to bring in Andrew Terrace from Breckenridge. Andrew, thank you so much for joining the Climate Summit.
Thanks for having me.
So, Andrew, what was the decision point for Breckenridge to start incorporating this data into their risk analysis, and what have you learned from it so far?
Yeah, so just off the bat, real quick. So Breckenridge, we're an investment advisor. We specialize in investment grade fixed income portfolio management. We are very much big on the integration of ESG and we're a leader within the fixed income space. And so, as part of that, we're very much believers that climate change as a material investment risk is something significant that we need to pay a significant amount of attention to. And as far as the municipal bond market, as sort of Chris was saying, we totally agree. Municipal bond issuers are on the front lines for this risk, right? The first tremors from climate risk are going to be felt in the market. These are stationary issuers, right? They can't up and move. So as Chris was saying, so, the problem that we faced and why we wanted to sort of start incorporating sort of quantitative geospatial measures of climate risk into our investment process was we're not experts, right? We're not experts in geospatial analysis. We're not experts in climate science. We're bond managers. And we just didn't have the expertise in-house to be able to know when we're looking at various, like a city like the city, how do I know what the city of Boston looks like vis-a-vis the city of Los Angeles or the city of Miami? How do they stack up in terms of their exposure from a climate perspective? And so the other challenge we have is that we're a big bond manager. We have over 40 billion in assets under management, and we're investing in all 50. In terms of our municipal investments, we invest in all 50 states. We have thousands of municipal holdings, and we needed something that was scalable, right? That would be able to, that we could immediately sort of use as a comparison and know where everything stacks up. And so that's sort of where the risk data comes in. It's at the CUSIP level, and we can immediately get a quick read on where everything stacks up. And we use that component as one element of an overall internal risk evaluation that we're doing. So, we're looking at traditional risk factors, like if we're looking at the city of Boston, for example, how much cash does the city of Boston have in the bank? Or, what's the aggregate value of the property? What's the taxing capacity of the city of Boston to pay us back? Then we're layering on some of these sheer physical climate risk factors, and so that package together is packaged into an overall information package that our traders and portfolio managers use in the pricing and security selection process.
When people think about climate risk, unfortunately, because of the way scientists have communicated it, they think about a 2150 or 2100 problem. So I could see now in this time why people are starting to look at long-term bond issuance and the risks that they have. But what about short-term bondholders? Why should short-term bondholders, 3 to 5 year maturities, really care about climate risk presently?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think there's a couple things to think about. The first thing would be, well, I mean, these risks are, as Chris sort of was getting into, these risks are materializing today. I mean, look at the fires and extreme heat in California that's going on right now. Look at the increasing frequency and severity with which hurricanes are hitting Florida and the Gulf Coast, right? So these are 2020 problems. And if you think about what borrowers, municipal bond borrowers, would be most at risk today would be, if you think about climate risk, it's essentially the way we view it is as a threat multiplier or an accelerant, right? So it in the sense that it can current climate events can magnify existing credit weaknesses of a borrower, right? So you have an issuer today who's exhibiting a baseline level of distress already, right? Think like a Puerto Rico or someone like that. And then you layer on top of it this risk of climate change, which is very real today, that can be a toxic brew of problems that can create repayment risk. We think in the near term, not just the medium or long term. And the other issue is, in terms of like, thinking this is a far off problem is, well, we don't know when that tipping point is, right? We don't think of climate risk or climate change as a linear, gradual, slow, predictable problem, right? This is much more likely going to be like a gradual and then sudden type event, right? And so, in certain areas, things could happen. Things could develop a lot faster than you're expecting, right? So if you think about a coastal community down on the Atlantic seaboard, right, it's exposed to sea level rise and coastal flooding. Well, all of a sudden, you could have a problem if the residents are picking up and they're saying we don't want to live here anymore. Like let's say the insurers pull out, property insurers pull out, and you have this exodus of people, and that creates sort of a snowball effect. Well, that again, that's not something that's supposed to that could easily be this predictable gradual process. It could be something very sudden. And so if you're not getting a handle on climate risk today, you could be way behind the 8 ball before you know it.
So Andrew, just to bring this home for the average investor, talk to us about what value at risk is and how you use that measurement to compare, let's say, a New York State bond to a Florida bond.
Yeah, so when we're thinking about sort of like how we connect this, how we connect climate risk, or how we use the data in terms of like what its impact is on, some of the core and fundamental sort of data points around climate risk that we would think about. There's a few that come to mind. I mean, the first is sort of a core thing that we've already talked about is property values, right? So, or tax base. What's the taxing capacity of this community in terms of its ability to repay its debt? If I think about a place in Florida, right, that has high climate risk, what is the impact and the speed with which property values could be affected in terms of the ability of the borrower to repay its debt? Another thing is migration, right? So population outflows or population loss. This is a leading indicator for credit stress, and this is sort of a traditional thing that's been in the muni market for a long time. Is that the loss of population is a red flag warning for credit risk and for stress. You think about the city of Detroit, which went bankrupt in 2013. One of their two big problems really were population loss and the shrinking of their tax base, right? And that basically inhibited them for a long time until they went bankrupt. And so if these places that have high climate risk, they start exhibiting these sort of core fundamental credit stress risks, and you can connect those two, then you can sort of see clearly where your value at risk sort of lies. The third sort of component that we think about is sort of the impact on debt or leverage, right? Obviously the higher leverage you have, the more risk you potentially could have in terms of your capacity to pay back. So we think about when we're looking at places that have high climate risk, it's what is the ability of that borrower to what is the ability of that borrower to fund infrastructure adaptation projects, or what is its ability to fund infrastructure to mitigate some of the risks that they have. So you think about, a borrower, the Florida Keys, right? What is the cost? Is it cost prohibitive to raise roads? How much is that going to cost? And if so, can the issuer borrow enough to at an affordable rate to make sure they can pay their investors back? So those are kind of examples of things that we think about.
I want to thank Chris Hartshorn from Risk and Andrew Terrace from Breckenridge for joining us for a deep dive into understanding the risks that municipal bond issuers are facing and those investors that are buying those municipal bonds around the climate change issues that this world is facing. You were joining me live at the Jacob Javits Center for the Nest Summit. Thank you.